Hello. Today we're going to uncover a mysterious disappearance that shook a city in Japan. A place that, at first glance, seemed peaceful and serene. The story begins in late spring, when gentle breezes brushed through the quiet streets of Maizuru, a coastal city in Kyoto Prefecture. Everything appeared calm, picturesque, and safe. But that calm was shattered by the sudden disappearance of a teenage girl. The victim was one 5-year-old high school student, Kosugi Miho, who quietly left her home late at night and vanished without a trace. Her disappearance was like a somber note in an otherwise beautiful melody, casting a shadow of mystery over the city. Where did she go? What happened to her? To answer those questions, we turn back the clock to the 6th of May, 2008. It was a seemingly ordinary Tuesday. The city of Maizuru, in northern Kyoto, was settling into its usual nighttime slumber. At around 10 p.m., Miho was still in her room. As her mother drifted into a deep sleep, Miho quietly got up, changed her clothes, and slipped out of the house around 11 p.m. But why head out so late at night? Miho was known as a somewhat introverted girl, who often enjoyed late-night walks by herself, finding peace in the stillness of the city. On her personal page, she once wrote with affection about Maizuru's beauty: the crisp air, the rolling mountains, the clear sea, and wide fields. Yet that night's walk seemed to have a purpose beyond a simple stroll. About an hour after leaving home, at 11:57 p.m., Miho posted a short message online, along with a blurry photo. In the image, faint red construction lights flickered in the darkness. That mysterious post would later become a crucial clue in the case. One thing is clear: after posting the message, Miho kept walking. At around 12:50 a.m., she called a close friend, sounding relaxed, and mentioned she was near a pharmacy along the highway. After that, she sent an email to her brother in Tokyo, though its contents have never been disclosed. Meanwhile, her mother slept soundly through the night, unaware of what was happening. By the next morning, Miho was still not home. At first, her mother wasn't alarmed. Miho was known to wander out on her own sometimes. But by 9 a.m., when her daughter still hadn't returned, unease turned into fear. The family quickly decided to contact the police. Authorities wasted no time. A search was launched, carefully combing through the area near Miho's home. But within just one day, the investigation took a dark turn. In a small wooded area, only minutes from her house, Miho's body was discovered. At the scene, it was clear she had been attacked. The most telling injury was to her head, which showed signs of blunt force trauma. What stood out, however, was that her clothing was missing. Based on evidence, investigators concluded she had likely been struck from behind. Her time of death was estimated to be in the early hours of May 7th. From that moment on, her case was no longer treated as a disappearance but as a homicide. The wooded area where Miho's body was found was dense with trees, with a small river running nearby. It was a secluded spot, hidden from plain sight. At the scene, police did not recover any fingerprints, suggesting the perpetrator may have planned the attack in advance and taken precautions such as wearing gloves. Based on the evidence, investigators believe the suspect could have been a young, physically strong male. The investigation began with a close look at Miho's social connections, searching for anyone who might have had a reason to harm her. 15-year-old Kosugi Miho, a 10th grade student, had not lived an easy life. Her parents divorced when she was young, and she lived with her mother. From early on, Miho struggled with mental health challenges. Later, her mother began seeing another man. Though they were never formally married, Miho affectionately referred to him as her stepfather. According to the principal of her former school, Miho was quiet, modest, and often more withdrawn than her peers. She had to transfer schools 3 times due to her mental health, a burden few her age would understand. After treatment, her condition improved, allowing her to return to a more normal routine. A former classmate recalled that while Miho often missed classes, she had never run away from home and was never bullied. She didn't have many friends, rarely joined group activities, and had little conflict with others. Neighbors confirmed she wasn't the type to argue or get into trouble. In April of that year, Miho enrolled in high school, but just 1 month earlier, her stepfather had died in a car accident. The loss was devastating, worsening her fragile mental state. As a result, she skipped the start of the school term and didn't attend the opening ceremony. Her mother even worried Miho might do something reckless in her grief. Despite being introverted and out of school, Miho wasn't a shut-in. She often visited friends and wrote online about her late-night walks. even noting once that police had mistaken her for a suspicious person. She also loved playing guitar and, before her death, was looking for bandmates to form a group. During the investigation, police focused on a male student close to Miho. Rumors suggested they had fallen out over a personal matter. However, the boy had a solid alibi and was cleared of suspicion. In an emotional interview, Miho's mother shared her unbearable grief. To her, Miho was everything no words could capture her importance. Tearfully, she described Miho as kind-hearted, recalling how her daughter once took in a stray cat. If not for this tragedy, she believed Miho would have grown into a remarkable young woman. With no clear suspect in her social circle, investigators turned their attention to physical evidence. They soon discovered Miho's clothing in the river, about 30 feet north of the crime scene. Her jeans showed signs of wear on the back pocket, and her white camisole had a small tear, as though it had snagged on something. What puzzled police was that although Miho had been attacked, her clothing appeared unusually clean, showing no obvious signs of struggle. Nearby, her phone, bag, and sandals were scattered on the ground. At her mother's request, photos of these items were released publicly in hopes of finding new witnesses. Police examined the emails on Miho's phone. Before the incident, she had been in contact with her family and a few friends. The conversations were ordinary, with nothing unusual. Investigators found only Miho's fingerprints on the device, no signs of anyone else. Using data from her phone, police reconstructed her movements on the night of the crime. Through a call with a friend, they learned that Miho had walked along National Route 27. After leaving home, she spent about an hour walking along the road before reaching a gas station on the outskirts. Parts of the route were poorly lit, which may explain why the photo she posted online appeared so blurry. Security footage from the gas station showed Miho in a white camisole, walking westward. About 30 minutes later, she was spotted near a pharmacy roughly 1.2 miles away. At a normal walking pace, the trip should have taken about 25 minutes, but Miho took twice as long. After that, she vanished without a trace. On that night, Miho was wearing platform sandals with 2-inch heels hardly suitable for long walks. Yet the pharmacy was nearly 4 miles from her house. How had she managed such a distance? To test the theory, police asked a female officer with Miho's height and build to walk the same route in identical shoes. It took 1 hour and 45 minutes, and by the end, the officer's feet were sore and the sandals damaged. Investigators concluded Miho must have used some form of transportation during part of her journey. Her mother confirmed that the family owned no car, only a bicycle, which remained at the house that night. Since the events took place after midnight, public transportation wasn't running. This suggested that Miho had likely been given a ride. Police questioned her friends but learned she had not arranged to meet anyone that evening. Aside from her habit of late-night walks, her purpose for going out remained unclear. While investigators struggled to find answers, a local resident came forward with a crucial tip. Around dawn on May 7, they recalled hearing a young woman's voice shouting as if in distress. They also heard a man and a woman talking, though they were too far away to recognize them. 8 days later, the investigation took a new turn. A truck driver reported that in the early hours of that morning, while driving on a road about 1,000 feet from the crime scene, he had seen a man and a young woman walking together, pushing a bicycle. The woman looked very much like Miho. It was too dark to see the man's face clearly, but the driver estimated he was about 20 years old. Following up, police checked more security cameras in the area. Footage showed Miho walking alone at 1:14 a.m. 2 minutes later, a man wearing a hat, riding a black bicycle, appeared. At first, they seemed like strangers heading in the same direction. But by 1:36 a.m., another camera caught Miho walking alongside the man toward the direction of the crime scene. Who was this man? Based on the testimony of witnesses, suspicion soon fell on Katsumi Naka, a 60-year-old man known for his eccentric behavior. He often wandered the streets late at night, scavenging through trash. His home was cluttered with odd items he had collected, including pipes and scrap metal. Neighbors said it was not unusual to see him carrying these objects while out walking. Given that Miho had been struck with a blunt object, suspicion toward Katsumi Naka grew stronger. A restaurant employee said he often saw Naka wearing a hat and riding a black bicycle around the neighborhood. Police showed this employee an image from surveillance footage, and although the picture was blurry, the employee believed Naka's height and build matched the figure in the video. Another witness reported seeing Naka the day before the crime, wearing a black jacket, the same type of clothing seen in the footage. Others claimed that after the murder, Naka discarded a large number of clothes, including a black jacket, and even repainted his black bicycle, as though trying to hide something. Neighbors described Naka as a troublemaker. Whether at work or around the community, he was often involved in arguments. When angry, he acted recklessly, and no one knew what he might do. Witness statements also suggested that he showed an unusual level of interest in young women. Naka lived in public housing in Maizuru, just a few hundred yards from the crime scene and close to Miho's home as well. Unemployed and surviving on social welfare, he lived in a cluttered two-story apartment filled with items he scavenged. Based on these circumstances, police found him suspicious and brought him in for questioning. When confronted, Naka insisted he had been drinking at several bars on the night of the murder and had no opportunity to commit the crime. But no one could verify his alibi. Despite multiple red flags, the truck driver's original testimony describing a man around 20 years old worked in his favor. Naka, at 60, looked and sounded nothing like someone in their 20s, and although surveillance captured him walking with Miho, it wasn't enough to prove he was the killer. 6 months later, in November 2008, Naka was arrested not for Miho's case, but for stealing ritual offerings from a shrine and for theft of women's underwear. Although there was still no direct evidence linking him to Miho's murder, circumstantial evidence continued to point in his direction. Police prepared to search his home, but his lawyer argued the warrant was unreasonable and fought to have it cancelled. After legal back and forth, the search was eventually approved, lasting 6 days under the lawyer's watchful eye. During the search, the lawyer attempted to record the process on video, but police stopped him. Supporters argued that because Naka's home was messy and full of random items he collected, police could easily claim something belonged to Miho and use it against him. However, officers did not misuse the search to frame him. Investigators focused on finding clothing fibers, soil particles, or anything linking Miho to the house. After a thorough inspection, nothing of value was found. Nearly a year later, in January 2009, police revisited the truck driver for more details. But this time, they made a critical mistake. Instead of showing him an array of photos, they presented only Naka's picture. This compromised the reliability of his identification. As a result, the truck driver changed his statement. He had initially described the man with Miho as being around 20 years old. Now he said the figure looked 50 to 60, resembling Naka. This error later became a major weakness for the prosecution. Based on the revised testimony and surveillance footage, police arrested Naka again in May 2009. 3 years after Miho's death, in May 2011, the trial began at the Kyoto District Court. Naka was charged with murder, though not with sexual assault. With no direct evidence, prosecutors relied on circumstantial details. Defense attorneys argued the truck driver's testimony was unreliable, since it had changed over time. Naka maintained his innocence, insisting he had never even met Miho. Yet police claimed that during questioning, he had accurately described the color and shape of Miho's handbag, something only the killer could know. On that basis, prosecutors demanded the death penalty, but there was a problem. The interrogation had not been recorded, and Naka denied ever giving such details. The judge noted that since Naka had been seen near Miho before the crime, it was difficult to imagine anyone else as the culprit. After deliberation, the court declared him guilty of murder and sentenced him to life in prison. Naka refused to accept the verdict. He shouted in court, "I am innocent," and filed an appeal to a higher court. A year and a half later, the appeal trial took place at the Osaka High Court. In the first trial, there had been 2 key pieces of evidence against Naka: the truck driver's testimony and the blurry security footage. But the appellate judge ruled that both were circumstantial and needed to be scrutinized carefully. The judge reasoned that the truck driver may have been influenced by police during prolonged questioning, leading to confusion between the suspect's appearance and Katsumi Naka. As a result, the testimony was thrown out as unreliable. On top of that, the security footage was so unclear that it only showed a silhouette. Even though the figure wore clothing similar to Naka's, there was no way to prove it was him. When asked how he knew the description of Miho's handbag, Naka said he had learned it from photos released by police. He also claimed that investigators insulted him during interrogation and pressured him to admit he had seen the bag near the scene. After weighing the evidence, the Osaka High Court declared Naka not guilty. In court, Naka broke down in tears, saying he finally felt vindicated. Miho's mother, sitting in the gallery, froze in shock before breaking into sobs. Relatives had to carry her out. Later, in an interview, She said she could never accept the verdict that Naka had tormented her family for years, and she would not let the matter rest. She vowed to continue appealing. Yet 6 years after the crime, the Supreme Court of Japan upheld the Osaka ruling, leaving the acquittal in place. By the time of the final decision, Naka was already behind bars for another crime. He had been caught stealing magazines from a convenience store and sentenced to 1 year and 2 months in prison. Naka's past was already littered with convictions. As a teenager, he was sent to juvenile detention for extortion. At age 25, after his girlfriend's family opposed their relationship, he stormed into their home and killed both her and her younger brother, earning a 16-year prison term. Though released early for good behavior, he was soon arrested again for assaulting a 21-year-old woman. Reports at the time said she was injured in the attack, but a passing police officer intervened, chased Naka down, and caught him within 130 feet. This led to another 6-year prison sentence. The acquittal in Miho's case sparked widespread outrage in Japan. Many questioned why Miho had left home that night. On the evening of her disappearance, she had taken a photo of glowing red construction lights and uploaded it with the caption, "Found it," along with a joyful symbol. Friends suggested she had talked about those red lights before, and that curiosity had drawn her outside. Her body was discovered in the forest. Evidence suggested it was the actual crime scene, remote, isolated, and accessible only by crossing a small river. Why would a teenage girl walk there at night? One of Miho's friends speculated that she was in a fragile mental state, often saying she felt lonely and unsupported. Perhaps while walking, she met a man on a bicycle who seemed kind, offering her a ride. Miho may have let her guard down. Rumors circulated that before his trial, Naka had confessed to a fellow inmate. At first, he denied involvement, but one night he allegedly admitted that he had followed Miho, never intending to hurt her. But when she turned and saw his face, he panicked and silenced her. The rumor was never substantiated, and experts warned that prisoners often exaggerate or invent stories to boost their image. Some media outlets also questioned the truck driver's testimony. Drivers rarely noticed details of pedestrians at night. Yet he recalled Miho's appearance and the suspect's build with striking clarity. A journalist retraced the driver's route and found the road darker than expected, so dark that even photos were hard to capture. This raised doubts about whether the witness could have seen as much as he claimed. Among the many theories, one in particular gained traction: that Naka was not only behind Miho's death but also responsible for another unsolved case. In November 2001, 7 years earlier, the body of a 12th grade student was found in the Chikata River in Maizuru's Tancho district. She had wounds to her neck and chest, and her school uniform's buttons were missing. Investigators believed a utility knife had been used. Her belongings were later recovered in the river, except for her wallet and keys. The victim in the earlier case was Shintani Hisami, 18 years old, standing about 5'6", described as outgoing, cheerful, and surrounded by many friends. Shortly before her death, she had just landed a job at a beauty salon she had always dreamed of working in. The last confirmed sighting of her was 12 days before her body was discovered. On that day, she had been invited to a cultural festival at a friend's school. She left her own school early, caught a train in the morning, and spent the day there. The festival wrapped up around 5 p.m. Afterward, she stopped by another friend's home, but no one was there, so she went to a park to wait. 2 elementary school students spotted her sitting there. At around 5:30 p.m., someone saw her walking alone along a small road near the Chikata River. That was the final time she was seen alive. The spot where she was last seen was only about 1,300 feet from where her body would later be found. Investigators believed she was killed later that same evening. Because the riverside area was thickly wooded and isolated, her body wasn't discovered until more than 10 days later. Although her family had reported her missing, police at first dismissed it, assuming she had run away. Only after the discovery of her body did they begin a serious investigation. But by then, crucial evidence had been washed away by rain in the river, leaving investigators with little to work with. The case carried chilling similarities to Miho's. Both victims were found near rivers, and the 2 locations were only about a mile apart. Years later, even after Miho's case, Katsumi Naka continued his spiral. Just 4 months after the court declared him not guilty, he attacked a female colleague in an apartment in Osaka's Kita district, leaving her badly injured. Naka had been working as a janitor at a hotel, while the woman was a manager there. After being fired for poor performance, he held a grudge and returned for revenge. According to the victim, Naka stormed into her room wearing a mask, a hat, and gloves, armed with a small knife. He grabbed her from behind and assaulted her. She fought back fiercely and managed to escape into the hallway, screaming for help. Thankfully, someone heard her and she survived. In court, Naka tried to paint an entirely different picture. He claimed he had only gone to ask for his wages and that she attacked him first, forcing him to defend himself. He even shouted in court that she should be the one on trial. He complained about the hardships of prison, promising he would never reoffend. The court, however, rejected his claims outright. The victim sustained serious injuries that continued to affect her speech and eating, while Naka only suffered minor cuts. He was sentenced to 16 years in prison for attempted murder. In an interview afterward, the victim said she hoped Naka would die behind bars, fearing he would attack others if released. About a year and a half later, in July 2016, Naka's health deteriorated, and he was transferred to a prison medical facility. His specific illness was never made public. Eventually, he died there at the age of 68. Interestingly, his family name Naka often led people to mistake him for a foreigner or immigrant. But media outlets clarified that the surname originated from certain aristocratic and shrine families in the Hokuriku region, confirming Naka was Japanese. His death brought a bittersweet sense of relief to Miho's family. While unanswered questions still surrounded the case, they remained convinced he was responsible. The acquittal years earlier was a wound that had never healed. Every year on Miho's Memorial Day, her mother would lie awake, unable to sleep. Since losing her daughter, Miho's mother visited the crime scene every month, carrying sunflowers and pink clover, Miho's favorite flowers. She would sit there quietly for long minutes. Sometimes relatives, friends, and even strangers would stop by to leave flowers and prayers. At work, she never told colleagues about her daughter's death, unwilling to be looked at with pity. Instead, she spoke as if her daughter were still alive. It was the only way she could bear the weight of her grief. The case of Kosugi Miho has become like a scar etched into the quiet town of Maizuru. The red construction lights, the ones Miho happily posted about, saying, "Found it felt almost like fate," pointing toward a truth that will never be fully revealed. Her story stands as a haunting reminder of how fragile life is and how essential justice must be. It raises difficult questions about a justice system where an innocent person could be wrongfully convicted, or where a dangerous individual might walk free. Whatever the answer, the case remains an unresolved mystery, an echo of warning, and a mirror reflecting the darker corners of society. And with that, today's story comes to an end. See you in the next video.